In tonight's news edition, the United Nations announces that an aid convoy bringing food, medical supplies and non-food items will go to the besieged Syrian city of Madaya in the coming days. The EU foreign policy chief says after a meeting with Libya's political parties that she is very pleased with the discussions that focused on concrete ways to support the Libyan people. And for the first time since Hitler's death, Germany publishes his political treatise, Mein Kampf, the 70-year-old book written by Hitler between 1924 and 1926. Good evening and welcome to the news at 10. The United Nations announced today that an aid convoy bringing food, medical supplies and non-food items will go to the besieged Syrian city of Madaya in the coming days. The move comes after warnings of widespread starvation in the besieged city near the border with Lebanon have been growing, and the United Nations said it has received credible reports of people dying there of starvation. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights put the death toll at 10, while opposition activists say it is in the dozens. 42,000 people are currently living in the town, half of whom are children at great risk. Since the war began in Syria, government have besieged rebel-held areas near Damascus for several years, and more recently, rebel groups have blockaded loyalist areas, including the 2 villages in Idlib province. UNHCR spokesman, however, warned at a news briefing that the situation of Madaya was not the only one of concern.
Madaya's situation is extremely desperate. There's been no aid going in since October, no commercial access since October. We've had malnutrition reported among children, severe malnutrition also being reported. So a convoy is being planned at the moment for the next few days. There are huge needs: food, medical care, other basic supplies. UNHCR's part in that will be to try and ensure that people are getting basic aid relief, including such simple items as diapers for children, other really basic aid care. But it's essential that gets in, it's urgent.
In the ongoing war on Daesh, 23 airstrikes were launched against the group in Iraq and 3 in Syria yesterday, according to a statement issued today by the task force leading the operation. The coalition said 22 strikes in Iraq were coordinated with the Iraqi government against Daesh targets, including 7 in Mosul and 6 in Ramadi, where Iraqi troops drove out more of the terrorists last week after a hard-fought offensive. The statement by the task force said in Mosul and Ramadi, the strikes destroyed several Daesh targets. Other strikes in Iraq hit near Al-Qayyim, Sinjar, Haditha, Erbil, Qayara and Sultan Abdullah. In Syria, the coalition said airstrikes included 2 near Ain Isa and near Manbij. Turkey, and in a bid to stem the flow of illegal migrants to Europe, has introduced visa requirements for Syrians arriving by air and sea. The move has forced hundreds of Syrians to return to Damascus, Turkish officials said. Some 400 Syrians transiting through Beirut were unable to board 2 flights to Turkey late yesterday as a result of the move and had to return to Damascus. According to the planned restrictions announced by the Turkish Foreign Ministry last week, land border would remain open to migrants, a policy in place since the start of the Syrian civil war in 2011. And over to Yemen, the World Health Organization appealed for immediate access to the Yemeni city of Taiz, where it said all hospitals have been forced to close some services and are overwhelmed with wounded patients. WHO said its trucks carrying oxygen, medicine and medical supplies have not been able to enter Taiz since mid-December. The organization called on all parties to the conflict to allow the secure movement and delivery of medical and humanitarian supplies into the city, which has been living under the organization called a virtual siege since November. The United Nations has designated Yemen as one of its high-level humanitarian crises, alongside emergencies in South Sudan, Syria and Iraq. It says more than 21 million people, that is 80% of the population in Yemen, need help. European Union Foreign Policy Chief Federica Mogherini said after meeting with leaders of Libya's political parties in Tunisia that for the first time after so many months, discussions have focused on concrete ways of supporting the Libyan people. The meeting discussed the humanitarian support the EU can provide, as well as institution building, security issues, and how to support a Libyan leadership to take responsibility. Mogherini was joined by the Prime Minister-designate of Libya's proposed government, Fayez Sarraj, who said plans to form a stable government are on track. She said money has been made available to support Libya's institutions once the national unity government is in place.
We have 100 million euros that we already set aside for practical support, from the humanitarian activities to institution building, that is ready to be utilized immediately from day one of the Government of National Accord work.
But the violence continued in Libya when a suicide truck bombing in Tripoli on a Libyan police training center yesterday that killed at least 47 people was claimed by Daesh in what was described as the worst militant attack since the fall of Muammar Gaddafi in 2011. The truck bomb exploded at the police training center in the coastal town of Zlatan just as hundreds of recruits were gathered there for a morning meeting. More than 100 people were also wounded, many by shrapnel. In the United States, meanwhile, leading executives from U.S. technology companies, including Apple CEO Tim Cook, were to meet with senior national security officials to discuss how to better thwart violent extremists from using the internet. Facebook, Google, Twitter, Microsoft, Yahoo, and LinkedIn were also planning to send senior executives to attend the meeting. The dialogue focused on how to combat the use of social media by Daesh to recruit, radicalize, and mobilize its followers, according to the meeting agenda. It also deals with how technology can be used to better disrupt paths of violence and identify recruitment patterns, in addition to creating alternative content that can undercut Daesh. Residents in the picturesque Scottish Valley were forced to leave dozens of homes after a river dawn burst its banks, causing levels of flooding locals said they have never seen before. Fighters, police, and Coast Guard teams mounted rescue operations to help people from their homes, including a care home for the elderly. The worst-hit areas saw cars and cottages submerged under record-level waters. This report has more.
The waters began rising in the middle of the night from the River Don in Aberdeenshire. By the time the sun rose, residents stepped out to discover cars, gardens, and homes underwater.
It started to build up, come across the park, you could see all the movement. That house is across the road there, come across the fields, and then out the end of the road, and that was the start of it. And it was just relentless. It didn't stop.
Dozens of residents were ordered to leave, including those at a home for the elderly. Many said it was the worst flooding they'd ever seen. Fierce storms and torrential downpours raked northern Britain and Scotland during December. Meteorologists say it was the wettest month in the UK since record-keeping began. And they're predicting more heavy rain in eastern Scotland this weekend.
And more severe weather in the United States, where El Nino-powered storms brought flooding and lightning across drought-stricken California. Video clips filmed by local residents show lightning flashing on the beach and heavy flooding across roads and car parks. Meteorologists say the storm was the strongest thus far of the El Nino season, adding that the season is expected to last into spring. California is in its fourth year of a drought that has cost the state's agricultural economy $1.84 billion, according to the University of California. The El Nino phenomenon is expected to help ease the drought over the next few months, but experts caution the state's woes are far from over. Back here at home, hundreds of worshippers from across Jordan and other parts of the world congregated at the baptism site in Jordan Valley for the Epiphany Festival, one of the most important religious events of the Christian calendar celebrated throughout the world. Father Rifat Badr from the Latin Patriarch of Jerusalem said it was especially important to commemorate this function in light of the difficult circumstances facing the region. The congregation attended a procession headed by the Latin Patriarch of Jerusalem, Fuad Atwal, who addressed the press before the Mass.
Aware about the dire situation we are living in all the Middle East, we cannot speak about our Christians alone because they are not living in a ghetto. They are an integral part of all the population, suffering with the same suffering and hoping that something new, good will happen in this new year.
For the first time since Hitler's death, Germany has published the Nazi leader's political treatise, Mein Kampf, which translates into My Struggle. The 70-year-old book, written by Hitler between 1924 and 1926, was banned at the end of World War II, but the republication opened the way for a critical edition with explanatory sections and some 3,500 annotations. The 2,000-page two-volume work went on sale after about 3 years of labor by scholars at Munich's Institute for Contemporary History. Keenly aware of the controversy surrounding Mein Kampf, the Munich Institute has stressed that the aim is to deconstruct propaganda and undermine any symbolic power the book still has. The book is a mixture of Hitler's personal experience and political ideology and was a bestseller after he became chancellor in 1933. By 1945, it had sold 12 million copies and has been translated into 18 languages. The 1969 custom Gibson Ebony Dove guitar played by Elvis Presley at his Aloha from Hawaii concert in 1973 failed to meet its reserve at auction at the late singer's Graceland home in Memphis. The guitar was expected to fetch between $300,000 and $500,000, according to organizers, but the top bid was a meager $270,000. Elvis played the guitar at dozens of concerts from 1971 to 1975, including the documentary concert film Elvis on Tour. Bidders also participated in the auction online at gracelandauction.com, as the auction took place at the Graceland Archive studio on the grounds of the mansion where the man dubbed the King of Rock and Roll died in 1977. Australia's Green beat France 2-1 in an entertaining Hopman Cup encounter to go through to meet Ukraine in the final. The Australian team survived a match point against the French in the championship tiebreak before winning the mixed doubles to seal the match 6-4, 2-6, 11-9. After the Australians had taken the first set 6-4, the French stormed back to win the second 6-2, leaving a third set champion tiebreak to decide the winner. The final point showed both pairs scrambling. New Real Madrid manager Zinedine Zidane said that every player in his team will have to help to defend, and he puts collective work over individual skills. Talking at a news conference after Real Madrid trained for the league match against Deportivo La Coruña, Zidane emphasized the importance of defensive work by every player. So far, the quietly spoken Zidane has given little indication of the way he plans to breathe new life into the side that boasts plenty of talent but failed to perform in big games under former coach Rafa Benitez. And finally, it continues to be cold in most parts of the country, with more thundery rains and hail expected throughout the night. Tomorrow, more cold and cloudy conditions prevail, with sporadic showers across the kingdom. Winds will be northwesterly moderate to gusty. The Gulf of Aqaba should expect cloudy conditions with a slight chance for light rains, northerly moderate winds and choppy seas. Next are the lows and highs for tonight and tomorrow. To end the news, here's a reminder of our top stories. The United Nations announces that an aid convoy bringing food, medical supplies and non-food items will go to the besieged Syrian city of Madaya in the coming days. The EU foreign policy chief says after a meeting with Libya's political parties that she is very pleased with the discussions that focused on concrete ways to support the Libyan people. And for the first time since Hitler's death, Germany publishes his political treatise, Mein Kampf, the 70-year-old book written by Hitler between 1924 and 1926. With that, we come to the end of tonight's news. I'm Nancy Khair. Thank you for watching and have a good night.